In this video, I'll review, break down, and recap all the events of Pluribus Episode 3, Grenade, including my favourite scene of the entire show so far, along with insights from the official Pluribus podcast. Subscribe for more movie and TV reviews and to not miss next week's Pluribus video. But man, this show just keeps getting better and continues to surprise, delight, and exceed my expectations. Roll the intro. Welcome back to the channel. I'm CineChap. Let's dive into Pluribus Episode 3, Grenade. If you haven't watched the episode yet, I'm going to talk about everything, so full spoilers ahead. You have been warned. And just before we start, feel free to listen to this like a podcast. Without further ado, let's recap and discuss. So we open with a significant time jump, and it says 2,617 days. I was not expecting that at all. And initially, I thought it was all the way in the future, and I was like, what? But then I saw it was actually counting down, which meant it was in the past. So we're at an ice hotel in Norway with Helen and Carol on some sort of trip away. And they didn't actually film in Norway. They actually created this entire hotel from scratch. The Pluribus podcast revealed that their ice is made from plastic cubes from Germany and a lot of styrofoam. And this whole thing was built on a soundstage. And I had no idea. The production design, set design on this, absolutely exceptional. So great job, everyone who was involved in that. So Carol and Helen are getting taken through this hotel, and the guide is talking them through the history of the place, how it was made, and all these like really fascinating things. And Helen's engaging and really interested and wanting to learn more. And Carol just isn't saying a word. She's just following along silently. And the guy finally leaves. Helen says, oh, thank you. Tries a bit of the language out. Again, very friendly, very affable. And he leaves. And Carol's just... The first thing she said is like, the bed is made of ice? And yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I would be too keen on that, to be fair. But, you know, you've come to Norway, to an ice hotel. What do you expect? And Helen's like, oh, this is great. This is such an adventure. And Carol's like, can't we just go somewhere that's just a nice hotel instead of an experience? And Helen's like, why not both? And she's trying to get her to just sit down and have some brandy because it's really good. But Carol's just complaining and seems determined to just be miserable. Something this scene does is just show how Carol almost chooses to be miserable and to not be happy. And this is obviously years before the joining happens. And we see this is just who she is, really. And Helen's trying to cheer her up and saying, oh, your book's actually doing really well. And she's like, how well? You know, it's in like the top 20. She's like, okay, closer to 11 or 20. And so she's just not satisfied with anything. Helen eventually gets Carol to sit down and they look at the Northern Lights. And Carol's like, huh, looks like a screensaver. That did make me laugh. And, you know, we see their dynamic is very yin and yang. You know, Helen is almost the exact opposite of Carol. She's delighted in new things, embracing the experience. And Carol just can't even process or enjoy good news as just that. And as they cozy up under the stars and they gaze at the Northern Lights, she doesn't even smile like a little bit. She just stares blankly. And it just seems to be a really good summation of what their dynamic and what their relationship was like years before the events of this show. And I think I said it before, but Ray Seahorn, and yes, it's actually pronounced Ray. I know in the last video I was saying Rhea. Sorry about that. It is Ray Seahorn. And Ray Seahorn brings something intrinsically likable to Carol as a character, which is quite impressive because I think on paper it'd be quite easy for another actress to fall into that and make Carol an unlikable character, particularly as you see some of these lines written on the page. But Ray's able to bring this pain and this humor to this miserable character. There's always this sense that she's hiding her true self and choosing to not embrace happiness. And the writing does a great job of keeping the levity in what could be genuinely really bleak situations. So we cut back to current day, and Zoja is back on the plane with Carol, and she still refuses to sit in first class, just choosing to be stubborn. And as I said, almost refusing to be happy or enjoy anything about this entire scenario, which, can you blame her? And she presses the call button just before Zoja sits down after they have a little conversation and just demonstrates her pettiness, which is also funny. Speaking of Zoja, I'd actually like to mention Carolina Vidra, who plays her. She has a really specific tone of voice, and she does a great job in this role, which on paper can be seen as quite flat. But she does this great thing where you can see her processing the things Carol asks her, and she's definitely able to convey complicated information with confidence and poise. And she almost defines the personality, if you can call it that, of the others. And so when Carol encounters other people, other others, other others, that doesn't quite work, does it? But anyway, um, they all take on the work that Carolina Vidra has done. And I think she's done a great job of defining that. And in previous episodes of the Pluribus podcast, Carolina Vidra goes into that and how it was a constant discussion with the writers and the directors and the show creator Vince Gilligan about what tone to bring to each scene in order to keep that consistent. So back to the episode, Carol asks about these 6 other non-English speaking people who have yet to be, quote, turned. None of them are scientists or doctors or have any particularly useful experience to help Carol out, although 2 of them really like cats, so there's that. And she asks about the guy in Paraguay who they discovered about 33 hours later after the joining, and he's been mostly keeping to himself. So Carol attempts to call him on the phone because they don't know much about him, and she wants to find out if she can get through to him. But after repeated attempts trying to call him while she's on the phone, they only manage to exchange insults in Spanish, so that's another dead end. And at that point, Carol just collapses in the toilet and seems just resigned to despair and resigned to the situation that she's possibly not going to be able to reverse it or change it at all. So Carol returns home, and Zoja has obtained all the mail that was sent to her address. So the last mail she'll probably ever receive from the previous world order, I guess, including a parcel, she says, we think you'll really like. So Carol goes back inside and opens this package, and it turns out it was from Helen, and it was a massage gun that she had tried at the airport during their book tour, but Carol felt it was too expensive. So Helen had ordered it online as a surprise sort of end of the book tour present to help her relax and not feel so stressed. And Carol finds all this out by asking Zoja, like, what did you think was in this? Like, what do you know about it? And so, oh, it's this, great thing Helen got for you. And Carol's really angry and tells Zoja for them, the others, to forget Helen entirely and never speak about or bring her up again. Only she can remember her. And she doesn't want to see them anymore. She's like, leave me alone. And so, Zoja and the others play that completely wrong. They might, essentially be the most emotionally intelligent people on the planet, as it were, but they're still human. I think that's what makes this really interesting. They still make mistakes, so they misplayed that entirely. They thought, oh, Carol really liked this from Helen, but they just completely misread the situation about how she would react. So Carol then falls asleep alone watching Golden Girls on TV. There's this really cool establishing shot, actually, where we see the reflection of the TV on the back of the DVD as it pans across the table. Really cool and expressive and unique shot. Great stuff. And the podcast confirmed that was actually entirely done in camera. So awesome job. She wakes up in the morning to find breakfast has been delivered to her door. I think this is day 4 now. And it turns out it's this exact breakfast from a place she visited in 2012 that she loved. Carol questions how she knew, firstly, about enjoying this breakfast without using Helen's, quote, knowledge. And they explained that her comments to the chef left a lasting impression. So then she's like, how did you know I needed breakfast? How did you know I didn't have any, food in the fridge without, again, using Helen's knowledge? And they're like, oh, well, you have cleaners that came over and they noted the items in your fridge. So she's like, stop spying on me. I don't want anything to do with you. Stop trying to do things for me. She chucks that breakfast in the trash. And she's like, right, screw this. I'm going to go get food for myself. She leaves the house and goes to her local Sprout supermarket, but it's entirely empty. And I mean, I saw this. I'm like, wow, that must have been a nightmare for the production team to empty all of that out. I can only imagine how long that would take. And it turns out the podcast reveals this was a real store that they shot in for about 2 days, the interior of, and they had to do overnights to empty it and then refill it. And it's quite an eerie thing to see an empty shelf, especially like the whole store. It for me evokes images and scenes from post-apocalyptic shows, which I guess this is, but it feels very different tonally to those other ones. There is more levity than you expect in this show, and I do appreciate that. So she dials 0 and calls up and like, what's going on? And it turns out they've moved essential resources like medicine and food to centralized locations for efficiency. And Carol's like, I want my Sprouts supermarket back. I don't want to have to call you every time I want something. She says, I'm very independent, always have been. They just go, okay, Carol. And she's just like, okay, shall we say, what, Friday? I want to know when I can come back. And the person on the line just says, 1 hour away, Carol. And all these flatbed trucks just appear and just start coming into this car park, synchronized and almost like a ballet. And it's a really impressive display of precision driving. And there were long shots that let you enjoy and take in this moment, which is like, again, quite impressive. I think there's like 8 or so, and they all just come one after the other, perfectly timed, perfectly choreographed. Apparently it's took, that was like a whole day of shooting just to do that. I'm not surprised. And they're just all hitting these marks exactly on time. Really cool. And so the trucks park, people come from the town, they just come out of, the edges of the frame and just come into the shot and just start unloading these trucks. And they're all carrying something. And they say, can we get by, Carol? So Carol steps aside and they just start filling up the shop again. And again, really great choreography. It's one of those things they said on the podcast is effortlessly complicated with the choreography and took a lot of planning and coordination. And again, it's quite eerie, just all these others getting on with a task in silence, like ants, really. I think that's the closest approximation I can think. And again, they did shoot at a real Sprouts location, so the interiors are genuine. And initially, the sequence was going to be longer inside. There were whole storyboards made inside the store where we would have seen the others restocking and filling up the shows, and it would have made a big thing of it, but they weren't able to due to time limitations at this location. So that's why they did the truck ballet instead. The car park of which was actually shot in an abandoned Sears location on the other side of town, which they'd previously used for Better Call Saul, apparently. And then they used visual effects to make the storefront look like Sprouts instead of Sears. I just really love learning about the production and behind the scenes of shows and movies. I think it just always demonstrates how creative and inventive people are when making these shows. And I just find it absolutely fascinating. I hope you do too. Let me know in the comments. Is this too much or too little? What do you think? So 2 hours later, Carol does her shopping alone in this store and just grabs the items she wants and then heads back home, makes herself some dinner, and she just sits down in front of the TV watching Golden Girls again. It's dark out. She falls asleep once again on the sofa and wakes up because the TV turns off and the power's gone. And she's like, oh, what now? And she looks outside and all the lights in the distance have gone out. And she calls up Dial Zero and goes, what is going on? And they're like, oh, sorry, Carol, we didn't mean to startle you. We're just trying to switch things off for efficiency. And she's like, what do you mean? It's like, well, we don't work at night and we're trying to save power. And we had a bit of a problem with the breaker trying to get to your place. Are the lights back on now? She's like, yeah. It's like, just stop messing around with things. Like, okay, Carol, we understand that. And so they ask, are you okay, Carol? Is there anything we can get you? And she's like, oh, yeah, I'm great. I could be better. The only thing that would end this week that's been the best in the entirety of human history would be a hand grenade. That would be the perfect, end of the week. And so then she hangs up in frustration, just continues drinking. A little bit later, Zoja rings the doorbell and says, we think you were joking, but we just wanted to make sure. Here you go. And she holds out a hand grenade. And the face Ray pulls here is just so good. She's just so deadpan. And also, it's worth mentioning the way Carolina Vidra plays this. The Zoja is fantastic. She's like, oh no, okay, we can see now that you weren't being serious, but we just this was a mistake. All right, I'll take this away now. And she starts walking away, and Carol says, "Do you guys drink?" So invites her in, and they end up having a conversation where Zoja tells her all these interesting facts about the vodka they're drinking and where it came from. And Carol's like, oh, yes, you just stole all that information, did you? And they get into, how long do I have until I'm going to join you? And she's like, well, it's hard to say. Could be 2 weeks, could be a few months. People are working round the clock, It's like, oh, my goodness. They're desperate for Carol and all the other people who haven't turned yet to join them. And she's like, you say my life's my own. You say I have freedom, but it's only until I don't. And Zoja talks about this analogy where if you saw someone drowning in the lake, would you throw them a life preserver? And Carol's like, oh, well, you think I'm drowning? Is that what it is? It's like, yeah, you are. You just don't know it. And so Carol's like, oh, I suppose this is so wonderful, isn't it? That you just get to live in perfect harmony. It's just wave and wave of contentment and happiness all the time. I'm sure that's what it is. And she picks up the grenade and is like playing around with it. And she pulls the pin out. And Zoja kind of stands up. stairs, and Carol's like, "Oh, as if you would give me a real grenade. Come on, like this is obviously." And so I think it's called the spoon actually flies out of frame, and Carol has a very panicked look on her, and Zoja comes up to her and is like, "If we may, Carol," and grabs the grenade, smashes the window, throws it out the front, and jumps onto Carol as this explosion happens behind them. And oh my goodness, it just comes out of nowhere. It's very sudden, very big. I was delighted to discover that again they did this in camera with the actors for the most part as well, and it looks great with the explosion happening behind them for real. And Carol steps outside, and the truck is exploded. It's on fire. There's fire across the front. It's like like something out of a war movie. And Zoja comes stumbling out and is clearly injured. She's got shrapnel in her back, and she collapses. And Carol's like, oh no, oh, she's just freaking out. And Zoja's like, it's okay. Even then, she's obviously in pain, but still trying to be supportive of Carol and making sure she's okay. So just like, it's okay, Carol, don't worry. Help is on the way. And as great as that scene was, which was absolutely fantastic, it still wasn't my favorite scene of the show. And actually, my favorite scene so far of this show is the next scene here. So we cut to Carol at the hospital in the waiting room, and the guy in a FedEx uniform comes out, and he lets Carol know they're just going to be okay. She's got a pretty severe concussion, but none of her injuries will be permanent, and she'll be okay. So Carol's like, okay, why did you give me a live hand grenade? And he's like, well, we wanted to make you happy, Carol. We, would do anything to make you happy. And she's like, would you give me another grenade after just what happened? And he's like, yes. So would you give me a bazooka and a rocket? And he's like, yes. A tank? Yes. An atom bomb? And he's sort of thinking, so, and she's like, you can say no at this point. No would be the sane thing to say right now. Like, this is completely insane. And he's like, well, we would weigh the pros and cons of why you would want it. And like, what would you do with an atom bomb? And Carol's like, oh, I just, use it somewhere for fun, just to see what would happen. And the actor in this scene, he's playing the FedEx guy. He's fantastic. He's got this pained expression on his face, as if you can see him calculating all the risks, and if he's listening to all these competing voices in his head as they're trying to figure it out, as the others are trying to figure out, is this a situation which we would agree to? And he sort of says slowly, we would figure it out. We'd probably, yes. And she's like, what? You're like, why would you do this? And he's like, we would move heaven and earth to make you happy. Like, we would do anything to make you happy, Carol. And then he's like, so would you like an atom bomb, Carol? And she's like, I'll get back to you on that. He's like, okay. And he takes like a big sigh of relief. He's like, okay. As if, thousands of people are just sat back down who are ready to make this insane thing happen. And then he goes, would you like a coffee, Carol? And she's like, no, you can go now. And so he walks off. And the episode ends with a zoom in as a song plays. And Carol's got this, what I perceive and interpret to be a mischievous look on her face as the episode ends. So, man, I don't know. Once again, I don't know where this show is going, but I am so into it. I think this is just such a great show exploring human nature and choice and free will, and what would it look like if everyone on Earth was basically in agreement except for a few people. I mean, it's just such a fascinating concept, and Vince Gilligan and his writing team and all the creators involved are just doing such a great job bringing this to life. I can't wait to see what happens next. I don't know if I can even predict. I think I said before, one of my theories was that, obviously these others, they're desperate to get Carol and the other people who aren't part of their joining yet to join them. And so they're working around the clock to figure that out, to figure out the science behind it and figure out a cure, essentially. So perhaps they are only acting like this in terms of being nice to Carol and wanting to keep her happy just long enough for them to figure out this cure and get them all to join them. And then, who knows? I mean, I predicted, my best guess at the moment is that they're going to build a giant satellite to then transmit the signal across the stars once again to keep spreading. But who knows? In the meantime, what's Carol going to get up to? Is she going to change, or is she going to remain stubborn? What other scenarios is she going to get into? She's going to have some fun now, perhaps, now that she realizes that they basically don't say no to her. So even if the most insane requests. So it'll be very interesting to see what Carol does with that information now. But yeah, just another great episode. Really fascinating exploration of this idea. And I'm just along for the ride now. And I hope you are too. So if you enjoy this video, give it a like, press that hype button. It's designed for smaller channels like me to help give us a boost in the algorithm. And comment below, what do you think is going to happen next in Pluribus? Did you enjoy this episode? Is it your favorite one yet? Do you have any standout scenes or characters at this point? Where do you think the show is going to go? I would love to discuss with you in the comments below. And please consider subscribing so you don't miss next week's episode and my upcoming film and TV reviews. Thanks for watching. Bye.